Hello everyone, this is Anna. I'm the creator of the Oracle of the Magical Fairy Forest, the founder of Wonderland Publishing, and the co-founder of the Deck Creators Launchpad, where we guide creatives, authors, healers, coaches, entrepreneurs on their journey of creating, launching, and selling their card decks. And in today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing. This came up in a conversation the other day, and it's a question I get quite a lot. Usually I work with people who want to self-publish their decks, but every once in a while I do talk to someone who's more interested in traditional publishing, which means getting their deck published by a big publishing house like Hay House or Blue Angel, or maybe a smaller publisher. But yeah, I feel like often people don't really fully understand, well, first of all, what the difference is, but also, most importantly, what the benefits and downsides are to each of these options. So I wanted to share a little bit more in this video. Let's start with traditional publishing. So this is the publishing method that's been around for a long time. And usually this would look like, okay, you've written a book or created a card deck, and you might have been approached already by a publisher and you have a contract with them, or sometimes you might reach out or you might work with an agent who helps to connect you with a publisher. And then they do most of the work for you. So you provide part of the work usually. If you're an artist, then you'll provide the artwork. If you're an author, then you'll do the writing. And sometimes it might be a collaboration between you and an artist and you get published together. But the common denominator really is that after this initial creative phase, you might already have the contract while you're working on the deck, or you may have already created something and then you approach a publisher. But after that, the publisher will really take over most of the work. So the editing, the graphic design, and producing the deck, and then also doing some of the marketing for you. And publishers, big publishers especially, usually have big established networks of distributors that they work with, and so they have the infrastructure in place that allows them to get your decks into retail stores worldwide, on Amazon, and so on. And so in theory, all of this sounds great because a traditional publisher will cover a lot of the costs that you might have to cover yourself if you're self-publishing. And you do get access to an established network of manufacturers and distributors and so on. And so you don't really have to figure out all those pieces yourself, which can sometimes be quite complicated or time-consuming. And some people just don't really want to deal with the hassle of managing all the logistics. And the idea that a lot of people have is that if they work with a big traditional publisher, they will become a best-selling author, and the publisher will do most of the marketing for them, and they don't really have to do anything to help spread the word about the deck. It's going to be really easy to get the word out there and so on. And maybe they're even going to make a lot of money off of the deck or the book they've published through the traditional publisher. And that can happen, but the reality is most often, especially nowadays, that's not really going to be the case. So even if you are working with a traditional publisher and you have that platform available to you, it can support you in reaching your goals more easily. But you will have to do a lot of the work yourself still to help market and sell the deck. And usually they will expect you to have an established platform to even consider taking you on board and working with you. Often that will be a requirement. And it's really a long-term commitment on your end. So if you're not all in, this is, either way, it's not going to work. You do have to commit to a project like this in the long run. And then the financial piece also. So how payments work with traditional publishers is sometimes you'll get an advance, especially if you're already an established author with a pretty big audience and they've already worked with you and they kind of know what they can expect in terms of sales. So you might get an advance on your royalties before you even start the project. But other than that, you'll just get royalties, which means that every time your publisher makes a sale, then you get a percentage of that. And usually it's somewhere around 5%. If they're really generous, it could be something like 10. And usually that's 5 or 10% of the wholesale value, or a discounted value that they pass on to the retailers. So if you do the math, you can kind of get a sense of how many decks you need to sell to reach a significant income goal with this type of publishing. Now, I will say that there are definitely other ways to make money off of selling a deck in addition to just selling the product itself. And the same thing with books. So most book authors don't really make money, significant amounts of income directly off of selling their books. But the book or the deck can be an entry-level offer. So it's kind of the beginning of your offer funnel to get more people into your audience. And then some of these people will move on to working with you in different ways. So they might sign up for your courses or buy more of your products, even work with you one-on-one if that's something you're offering. So this is usually how this works. And especially if you're being published traditionally, this is pretty much the only way for most people to make this sustainable, in a more significant way for business in the long run. Now, with self-publishing, the main difference is that you are the publisher of your own deck. And so you manage everything yourself. You do all the work yourself, or you can hire someone to help you with parts of the work, which I highly recommend if there's parts of the process that you're not really familiar with or that are not in your zone of genius. So you may be an artist, but you may not be a skilled writer. You may want to write your guidebook, but then work with an editor to help you polish your written content to perfection, proofread everything. And I would recommend doing this anyway, even if you're a good writer. The thing is, when we try and edit our own work, it's usually a different process than when we edit something for somebody else, because when we're too close to our work, then there's just certain things that we're going to miss. So that's just a side note here. But yeah, you can get the help you need for certain parts of the process if you don't want to manage everything yourself, but you're going to cover the investment for that in one way or another, whether it's a collaboration with somebody where maybe you split the profits 50-50, or just a certain percentage that works for you, or you pay someone to do some of the work for you and then you get to keep all the profits after that. Yeah, so some reasons why people choose to self-publish. There's some really important main reasons. So first of all, I didn't actually mention this, but working with a traditional publisher, even just finding a publisher that is willing to publish your deck or book for you, can be a long, long road with no guarantee of success. You may have to submit a lot of proposals. You might receive a lot of rejections, and you might be working on this for months or years even and not really get anywhere. So self-publishing in that way is just a lot faster because you don't have to wait for a publisher to say yes to you. You can just move forward, do the work, put it out there, and then your deck is a real thing. It's out in the world. So that's one advantage of publishing the deck yourself. Now, another big advantage, and I think this is a really big one for a lot of the people that I've worked with, and that is that when you self-publish, you have a lot more control over your creative process. It's still a good idea to get some feedback from others, experienced professionals or beta readers or beta testers, but you don't have a publisher that's, going to completely change your work. Sometimes when you work with a traditional publisher, they may want to change some of your artwork or significantly change some of your writing, which can be a good thing too, because they know what it takes to make a product, beautiful, professional, and also make sure that it sells. So it's not always a negative thing, but if it's really important to you to be in charge of your creative process, and you don't want somebody to come in and, just change everything the way they want to, and sometimes without even really having the last word on this, then self-publishing is definitely the way for you to go. And yeah, also if you're, more concerned about making money off of selling your decks directly, then some of what I already mentioned in regards to traditional publishing will still apply here as well. So even then, your deck can still be an entry-level product and, the beginning of your offer funnel that can take people on a journey with you. And yeah, they can move to higher level offers with you. But it is a lot easier to be profitable, so make profits directly off of selling your decks when you self-publish. So there's, an investment for printing your decks and whatever other expenses you might have in the beginning. But then the profit margin for decks, let's say, if you're selling them yourself, especially independently published, you can charge more than a traditional publisher would. Your profit margin is going to be a lot higher than, well, let's say if you're working with a traditional publisher, but also than if you're selling books, for example. So nowadays, it's pretty easy to charge around $50 or more, depending on what your goals are and your target market, what type of product as well. But, anywhere between 35 or 50 or even more I've seen is totally common these days. And I see a lot of creators selling decks at pretty high price points where you're going to be able to make a pretty good profit off of each sale. And yeah, I'm not going to go too much into pricing strategy here, but yeah, you definitely want to make sure that it's worthwhile for you, because there's a lot that goes into creating a deck, not just financial investments or the time that you put into creating your deck, but also the time that you put into marketing and selling and growing your business in the long run, and then reprinting your deck as well. And so these are things that, of course, you need to keep an eye on. Now, something that people sometimes come to me with is the concern about how to cover their printing cost for producing their card deck. And this might be a topic for another video at some point as well, but I'll just give you a really brief overview here. So there are different ways of going about this. There are ways to produce your deck in small quantities so you don't have a large upfront investment. You can start slowly and build over time. There's also crowdfunding, which is a really popular thing nowadays, and this is how I brought this deck to life. So I did a Kickstarter campaign last year and I raised over 21,000 Canadian to produce this deck and then some other add-ons that I was producing at the same time. And so a lot of creators do it this way. If you have a really good product and you know what you're doing and you're well prepared, it's pretty easy to launch a deck on Kickstarter with the right strategy and, just the things in place that you need to have so that you can succeed. I have a video that I recorded earlier this year where I went in depth about how I raised the funds for my Kickstarter and how I built a successful campaign. So if you're interested in that, I will link the video down below and you can go check it out. And if you want more support to create, launch, and sell your card deck, I would love for you to come into our Deck Creators Launchpad at deckcreators.com. This is where we support creatives, healers, coaches, entrepreneurs on their journey of bringing their card decks to life. Again, you can find us at deckcreators.com. I can't wait to see you there. I'm sending you lots of love, and I can't wait to be back with more very soon.